For a long time, nothing seemed unusual. Just a quiet object, far beyond Mars, sliding through the dark like countless others before it. Cold, silent, obedient to gravity. Astronomers gave it a name, logged its path, and moved on. Another visitor, another routine observation. The sky was calm, and the universe felt familiar. For months, the object drifted along the ecliptic, following a path that made sense. Every calculation agreed. Every model nodded in approval. It was moving toward perihelion, that closest moment to the sun where comets wake up, heat up, and reveal who they really are. But until then, it waited. Night after night, telescopes tracked its slow crawl across the stars. A faint dot against endless black. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming, just numbers. Coordinates, time stamps, the kind of data scientists love because it behaves. And that's what made the first surprise so unsettling. It didn't come with an explosion, no sudden flash, no warning siren. It arrived quietly, hidden inside a graph. The first clean observation. Clear skies, perfect alignment, no interference. The kind of data you trust. At first, no one noticed. Just another light curve. A simple line showing how brightness changes as an object spins. Up, down, steady. That's how it's supposed to look. But then someone zoomed in, and the line wasn't smooth. It bent. Not sharply, not violently. Just enough to feel wrong. A subtle curve where there should have been none. A hesitation in brightness, as if the object paused before reflecting light back toward Earth. At first, it was blamed on angle, maybe dust, maybe surface ice, breaking unevenly. Reasonable answers. But when the same bend appeared again and again, from different observatories, silence filled the room. Because gravity doesn't hesitate, and light doesn't lie. The object wasn't just spinning, it was behaving. Brightness rose, fell, then leveled out in a way models couldn't predict. Not chaotic, not random, intentional looking. And that word, intentional, is not one scientists use lightly. Still, no one panicked, not yet. They told themselves stories they'd told 1,000 times before. We've seen stranger comets. We've misread data before. The universe is messy, so they waited. They gathered more observations, different wavelengths, different angles, different nights. And the sky stayed quiet. The object didn't flare, didn't fragment, didn't react to the sun the way most bodies do. It just kept moving, steady, calm, patient, like it knew where it was going. As days passed, the light curve grew clearer, cleaner, harder to dismiss. The bend wasn't a mistake. It repeated at the same rotation interval, the same brightness threshold, the same position in space. Patterns began to form, and patterns are dangerous, because patterns suggest rules, and rules suggest design. Someone asked a simple question out loud, the kind that freezes a room. If this is just rock and ice, why does it behave like it's aware of the sun? No one answered, because no one had a good one. The object was still far out, still cold, still early in its journey. Yet its reflectivity shifted slightly, as if parts of its surface responded differently to light. That shouldn't happen yet. Not at this distance. Not without heat. And definitely not in sync. Screens glowed in dark rooms. Graphs stacked on top of graphs. And slowly, quietly, certainty began to thin. This wasn't fear. Not yet. It was something stranger. Confusion mixed with curiosity. Excitement wrapped in unease. The kind of feeling you get when a shadow moves, but you're not sure if it was real. They ran simulations again, adjusted assumptions, fed the models more data. Still, the curve bent. Still, the numbers refused to line up. And the sun hadn't even touched it yet. Perihelion was still weeks away, which raised a troubling thought. If this is how it behaves in the cold, what happens when it gets close? Outside the labs, the world kept spinning. People slept. Cities glowed. Life went on. No headlines. No alerts. Just a small group of scientists staring at a moving dot, wondering why it felt different. The sky looked the same as always. Stars steady, moon familiar. But something subtle had shifted. Not in space, but in perception. Because once you notice a pattern, you can't unsee it. The object continued its slow descent toward the sun, carrying with it a question no equation could answer. Was this just another cosmic wanderer, or something that didn't belong to chance at all? For now, there was only waiting. Waiting for heat, waiting for change, waiting for the moment when the universe would reveal whether this was a simple discovery or the beginning of something no one was ready to name. And as the object drifted closer, the sky remained silent. But the data was already whispering, and it was asking something humanity has always feared to ask. What are we really watching? Move toward the sun, something changes, long before anyone expects it to. The object is still far out, cold, quiet, barely touched by the sun. At this distance, nothing dramatic should happen. And yet, the light coming off it begins to behave strangely. At first, it's subtle, so subtle it almost feels imagined. The brightness doesn't rise smoothly as the object rotates. It stutters, shifts, breaks rhythm, as if one side reflects light differently than the other. That alone isn't unusual. Most objects in space are uneven, scarred, dirty. But this is different. The change doesn't stay in one place. It moves. Mid-rotation, the reflection alters, as if the surface itself is changing while it spins. Not cracking, not breaking apart. Changing. Imagine watching a lighthouse, and halfway through the beam, the light color shifts. Not because the bulb failed, but because the lighthouse decided to adjust. That's what the data feels like. Screens refresh. Graphs redraw. The uneven reflectivity appears again and again, from different angles, different nights, different instruments. Still there. Someone suggests instrument error, a calibration glitch, a bad filter, reasonable ideas. They rerun the observation, same result. They clean the data, strip out noise, remove interference. Still uneven, still shifting. The models are updated. Surface ice, they say. Outgassing, maybe. Jets hidden in shadow. The equations run, then stall. Because the models won't settle. No matter how they adjust the parameters, the curve refuses to behave. It won't smooth out. It won't obey. The reflection peaks too early, drops too late, then levels off where it shouldn't, as if the object knows when it's being watched. That thought isn't spoken, not yet. Instead, something else appears, a word, not in public statements, not in press drafts, only inside quiet reports. circulated between trusted hands. Anomaly. It's typed carefully, almost apologetically, because that word carries weight. It means the data is real, but the explanation isn't. It means the universe didn't follow instructions. The anomaly isn't dramatic. It doesn't scream. It whispers. A soft, persistent mismatch between expectation and reality. The object continues drifting forward, unchanged in speed, still obedient to gravity, still calm. That's what makes it worse. If it were violent, it would make sense. If it were chaotic, it could be dismissed. But it's controlled, measured. The reflectivity doesn't fluctuate wildly. It shifts within narrow limits, almost carefully, like something staying within boundaries. Someone overlays the rotation data with the brightness shift. They line up perfectly. Every uneven reflection happens at the same point in rotation, as if the surface isn't random, but structured, segmented, layered. No one says panels. No one says surfaces. But the silence grows heavier. Emails get shorter. Meetings get quieter. People stop speculating out loud. Instead, they listen. The sun is still distant, just a pale glow from far away. There isn't enough heat to trigger complex behavior. Not yet. Which raises a question no one wants to face. If this isn't caused by heat, what's causing it? They search the archives. Past comets. Interstellar visitors. Nothing matches. Some objects tumble. Some vent gas. Some spin wildly. This one doesn't. It rotates smoothly, yet reflects unevenly, like a polished object with patches that refuse to shine the same way twice. And the strangest part, the changes aren't permanent. They appear, then fade, then return. Not damage, adjustment. Someone writes a note in the margin of a report. Surface response may be dynamic. Dynamic. Another careful word, another quiet warning. By now, the anomaly is no longer singular. It's persistent, and persistence demands attention. Still, no alarms are raised, no press briefings. The world remains unaware. But inside observatories, something has shifted. Not panic, doubt. The comfortable belief that this is just another rock from another star is starting to crack. Only slightly. But cracks spread. The object inches closer to the sun. Each day brings stronger light, sharper readings. And with each update, the anomaly tightens its grip, not growing louder, just clearer, like fog lifting to reveal a shape you weren't expecting. And beneath all the technical language, beneath the charts and numbers, a simple fear begins to form. What if this isn't bad data? What if this is the data, working exactly as intended? If that's true, then the certainty humanity relies on, the idea that space is passive, indifferent, predictable, may already be breaking. And this is just the first visible crack. The object keeps coming. The sun waits, and somewhere between them, something reflects light, unevenly, as if it's deciding how it wants to be seen. So the question hangs in the air, unanswered and growing heavier with every passing night. Is this just a mistake in our instruments? Or the moment our confidence in the universe begins to fail? It doesn't happen all at once. There's no sudden spike, no dramatic flash in the sky. Instead, the change creeps in quietly. One night, an astronomer notices something odd. The brightness of the object rises, then falls, then rises again, slowly, deliberately. At first, it looks like noise. the kind that sneaks into data when instruments get tired or the atmosphere interferes. So it's ignored. But the next night, it happens again. Same rise, same fall, same timing. A gentle pulse, not sharp, not violent, measured, like a slow heartbeat in the dark. They mark it down, flag it, move on, until another observatory reports the same thing. Different continent, different telescope, different team, same pulse. That's when the room grows quiet, because coincidence has limits. Brightness curves from multiple locations are laid side by side. They line up perfectly. Each pulse arrives within seconds of the others, too precise to be chance. Someone suggests rotation effects. Maybe the object is oddly shaped. Fair enough, but rotation would cause steady cycles, not pauses. This isn't spinning light. It's timed light. Up, hold, down, wait. Then again, the pulse repeats. Once every few hours. Not speeding up, not slowing down. Consistent. Like a metronome no one set. They stretch the data across weeks. The pulse doesn't drift, doesn't blur. It stays locked, as if governed by something internal. Noise is ruled out. Instrument error is checked, then checked again. The telescopes are fine. The sky conditions are clean. The signal remains. Someone runs a statistical test. The result is uncomfortable. The chance of this being random is almost zero. That's when a word starts to circulate. Quietly. Pattern. Patterns are dangerous, because patterns invite meaning. And meaning is something science avoids until it has no choice. Still, explanations are offered. Maybe gas jets turning on and off. Maybe tumbling debris. But gas doesn't pulse this cleanly. Debris doesn't keep time. This pulse is calm, controlled. It doesn't flare when the sun hits harder. It doesn't fade when conditions change. It just continues, like it doesn't care who's watching. The brightness increase isn't dramatic, just enough to notice, just enough to matter. As if it doesn't want attention, but isn't hiding either. A strange middle ground. Someone overlays the pulse timing with the object's rotation. They don't match, which removes another explanation. The pulse isn't caused by spin, it's independent. That's the moment when discomfort turns into unease, because independence suggests choice. And choice suggests intent. No one says that aloud. Instead, they talk about mechanisms, processes, unknown physics, safer words. But the questions are already forming. Why this rhythm? Why this timing? Why now? The object is still far from perihelion. The sun's influence is weak. There's no reason for periodic activity, and yet the pulse continues. Every few hours, the object brightens slightly, then dims, like it's breathing or blinking. The data is sent to more teams, more eyes. Everyone sees the same thing. No one wants to be first to say it, because once you say it, you can't take it back. A natural body doesn't pulse like this. At least, none we've ever seen. The pulses don't carry obvious information. No complex encoding. No sharp bursts. Just a steady on-off rhythm, which somehow makes it worse, because simple signals are harder to dismiss. They're intentional. Someone compares it to a lighthouse again, a slow beam sweeping the dark. But this beam doesn't sweep. It waits. The pulses continue for days, then weeks, always the same. The object doesn't speed up. as it warms, doesn't react to solar wind spikes. It behaves as if it's insulated, or protected, or regulated. The pulse becomes expected. Scientists find themselves waiting for it, watching the clock. And when it arrives on time, a chill sets in. Because predictability creates trust, and trust, in this case, is terrifying. Late one night, a junior researcher asks a question no one answers. What if it's not emitting light? What if it's reflecting it on purpose? The room goes still, because reflection can be controlled. Angles can be chosen. Surfaces can be designed. That idea isn't written down, but it doesn't need to be. The pulse keeps repeating. Steady, patient, unconcerned, as if it's not meant for us at all. As if we're just overhearing something. Publicly, nothing changes. No warnings. No announcements. The world sleeps peacefully under a sky that feels the same as always. But inside observatories, perception has shifted again. This is no longer just an anomaly. It's behavior. And behavior demands interpretation. The closer the object gets, the stronger the signal becomes. Not brighter, clearer, more confident. Like a voice that doesn't raise volume, but sharpens its words. And the question no one can escape now is simple, uncomfortable, impossible to ignore. Why would a natural body pulse like a signal? Because signals are meant to be noticed. And whatever this is no longer just passing through space. It's doing something. On purpose. And as the pulse continues, steady and calm, one thought settles deep into every mind watching the data scroll by. If this is a message, then we may not be the ones it's meant for. And that realization changes everything. The data arrives after midnight, not during a press briefing, not in a crowded room. It comes quietly as a file upload. Thermal readings. The kind most scientists skim through half awake, expecting nothing new. Because deep space is simple when it comes to heat. Far from the sun, objects stay cold. Get closer, they warm up. That's the rule. But tonight, the rule breaks. At first glance, the numbers look wrong. So wrong they feel embarrassing. Someone assumes a sensor glitch, another bad calibration, a corrupted packet. It happens. So they reload the file. Same numbers. They check the timestamp, check the wavelength, check the instrument. Everything checks out. And that's when the room goes quiet, because the object is warming. Not dramatically, not explosively, just enough to notice. Then, hours later, it cools. Then, it stabilizes. Not at ambient space temperature, not at solar equilibrium, but somewhere in between. A narrow band, a controlled range. Like it found a temperature and decided to stay there. That shouldn't happen. Natural objects don't regulate heat. They react. They lag. They overshoot. They don't balance. Yet the thermal curve does something unsettling. It flattens. The rise slows. The drop softens. Then it holds, as if something inside the object is compensating. Someone whispers the obvious. That looks regulated. No one responds, because regulation implies feedback. Feedback implies systems. Systems imply design. They pull older thermal data. Previous nights, earlier distances. The pattern repeats. As the object drifts closer to the sun, the temperature rises, then corrects. Solar radiation increases. The temperature resists. Solar wind spikes. The object absorbs, then releases, just enough to stay steady, not perfect. But close, too close. This isn't random heat, it's behavior. Someone compares it to a thermostat. The word hangs in the air. Unwelcome. Because thermostats don't exist in space. Not unless someone puts them there. They search for natural explanations. Exotic materials. Unusual ice. Porous rock, maybe. But even exotic materials follow physics. They don't anticipate change. They don't stabilize before reaching equilibrium. And this object does, every time. The most unsettling detail? The stabilization happens before perihelion, before the sun's influence peaks. As if the object prepares in advance. That makes no sense, unless it knows what's coming. The thermal pattern is plotted against time. A rhythm emerges, not matching rotation, not matching distance, matching nothing familiar. Just a quiet correction loop. Heat rises, adjustment. Heat drops, adjustment. Always returning to the same narrow range. Someone asks the question everyone is avoiding. What's regulating it? Silence. Because there's no answer that feels safe. Natural explanations stretch thin. The object isn't venting gas violently. No visible jets. No plume. It's not tumbling chaotically. Rotation is stable. There's no sign of insulation thick enough to explain this behavior. And yet the temperature holds. As if shielded. As if managed. Late night messages start circulating. Private. Careful. No dramatic language, just facts. The thermal response appears controlled. Deviation from expected passive heating. Pattern persists across datasets. Each sentence calm. Each implication heavy. Someone points out something chilling. The temperature stabilization coincides with the light pulses. Not perfectly, but close. When brightness peaks, heat stabilizes. When brightness falls, heat adjusts again. Two different datasets. Two different instruments, linked. That's when fear creeps in. Not as panic, but as realization. Because independent systems aligning suggest coordination. Coordination suggests intent. Intent suggests agency. No one wants to say it, but everyone feels it. This object isn't just reacting to the sun. It's responding to itself. Late into the night, simulations run non-stop. They try to force chaos into the model. It won't fit. They try randomness. The pattern collapses. Only controlled feedback recreates the curve. And controlled feedback requires a mechanism. Something internal. Something active. The sun rises over cities as scientists sit awake, staring at screens. Outside, the world feels normal. Cars move. Birds sing. Coffee brews. Inside, reality feels thinner. Because the universe just did something it's not supposed to do. Again. The object continues its slow path inward. Still silent, still steady, still behaving like it knows the rules and chooses when to follow them. No alarms sound, no emergency meetings. But something fundamental has shifted. This is no longer just an anomaly in light. This is thermodynamics bending. And thermodynamics doesn't bend easily. Someone finally writes the sentence everyone has been circling. If the heat regulation is real, then the object contains an internal process we do not understand. That sentence is saved, revised, saved again, then sent. And once it's sent, there's no going back. Because now the question isn't if something is wrong. It's what is doing the regulating. A machine? A system? A structure built to survive close passes to stars? No one knows, but the pattern doesn't care. It keeps holding, calm, measured, unbothered. As if deep space isn't dangerous at all. As if it was built for this. And that thought, more than any number on a screen, changes how the sky feels. Because space is supposed to be hostile, cold, unforgiving, dead. Yet here is something that manages heat, balances energy, and remains stable where it shouldn't. Which leaves one final question echoing through the quiet hours before dawn. What kind of object regulates its own temperature in the vacuum of deep space? And more unsettling still, why would it need to? The change begins gently, almost politely. No alarms. No sudden spike that screams for attention. Just a quiet adjustment in how the object greets the sun. As perihelion draws closer, sunlight grows stronger, sharper, more unforgiving. This is the point where most objects reveal weakness. Ice cracks, gas escapes, surfaces darken and scar. But this one doesn't. Instead, it brightens, not evenly, not gradually. It spikes, a sharp rise in reflectivity. Clean, sudden, undeniable. Like a mirror turning to face the light. At first, it's dismissed as phase angle effects. The geometry between Earth, Sun, and object can play tricks, so they correct for it. The spike remains. They blame surface ice, exotic ice, maybe, rare compounds that shine brighter under stress. Possible, but the timing feels wrong. The reflectivity doesn't increase randomly. It peaks at precise moments. Moments when the object's orientation aligns just right, as if it's choosing how to face the sun. The data shows it clearly. As perihelion approaches, one side becomes dramatically brighter. Not scorched, not eroded, enhanced. Then, after a short window, it eases back. Not burned away. Not damaged. Just adjusted. Someone overlays the reflectivity curve with rotation data. They line up. The brightest moments happen when a specific surface region turns toward the sun. Again and again. That region doesn't change shape. Doesn't fragment. It performs. Like a panel catching light. On purpose. No one wants to say that word. Panel. They choose safer language. Highly reflective surface area. Localized albedo variation. But the meaning is the same. This isn't random ice. This is orientation. The reflectivity spike grows stronger as the sun grows nearer. Almost protective, as if the object is minimizing heat absorption. That would explain the thermal stability. A reflective surface would deflect solar energy. And suddenly, the pieces begin to connect. Light pulses. Heat regulation. Now reflectivity control. Each one alone might be explainable. Together, they feel coordinated. The room grows quiet again. Someone suggests a rotating shell. Someone else mentions layered materials. All theoretical, all stretched, because nature rarely aligns behaviors this neatly. And then it happens. In a draft report, never meant for public eyes, a word appears, artificial, not highlighted, not emphasized, just there, typed once, then never mentioned again. But it changes everything, because once that word enters the conversation, it doesn't leave. Some dismiss it immediately, too extreme, too dangerous. Others don't argue. They simply move on and keep watching the data. The reflectivity spike repeats. Not exactly the same each time, but close enough to recognize. The surface appears to reorient itself slightly. Small changes, subtle angles, always favoring deflection over absorption. As if survival matters, as if passing the sun intact is part of the plan. That idea sits heavy, because comets don't plan. Asteroids don't adapt. They endure. Or they don't. But this object behaves like it's optimizing. The sun flares, solar radiation spikes. The reflectivity increases again. Just enough. Not too much. Not too late. Perfectly timed. Someone notes something chilling. The reflectivity shift begins before the peak radiation hits, before the danger fully arrives, which means anticipation. Anticipation requires prediction. Prediction requires awareness. No one says it, but everyone feels the implication pressing closer. The object doesn't look alive. It doesn't move erratically, doesn't send obvious signals. It stays quiet, almost respectful, but its surface behaves like a shield, and shields are built, not stumbled upon. The sun now dominates the sky around it, a blazing wall of energy. Yet the object remains intact, stable, bright, as if dressed for the encounter. Public models fail again. Exotic ice theories struggle to explain the precision. No natural process accounts for repeated, controlled reorientation without visible force. No jets, no debris, no chaos. Just response. Someone quietly removes random from a slide. No one notices, but that removal says everything. The reflectivity curve is now being watched as closely as the pulse. Scientists wait for it, expect it, and when it arrives, on time, a chill passes through the room, because predictability is no longer comforting. It's unsettling. It suggests reliability, and reliability suggests intention. The object doesn't scream its presence. It doesn't demand attention. It simply behaves in ways that reduce risk, protect heat, control light, maintain stability. Like something built to last. As perihelion looms closer, one question refuses to fade. Is this adaptation something rare but natural, born from extreme physics? Or is this design the mark of structure, purpose, and choice? No one answers, because the truth may sit somewhere. No one is ready to look. The object continues inward. The sun burns brighter, and the surface keeps adjusting, quietly, precisely, as if it knows exactly what it's doing, and perhaps why. The next phase is approaching. And if this reflectivity shift is intentional, then the encounter with the sun isn't a test of survival. It's a demonstration of capability, of preparation, of something that does not fear the light, because it was built to face it. The change isn't announced. It isn't written down in bold letters. No one sends an email saying something is wrong. It just happens. Data that once flowed freely begins to slow. Uploads arrive later than usual. Some files come incomplete. Others don't arrive at all. At first, it feels like coincidence. Busy schedules, network delays, normal problems. But then the pattern becomes familiar. And familiarity, now, is dangerous. Daily briefings shrink. Graphs lose detail. Language becomes softer, less certain. Instead of clear statements, there are phrases like "still under review" or "results remain inconclusive." Nothing alarming, nothing useful. The object is closer now, brighter, more active than ever. Yet the public updates feel strangely empty. Behind the scenes, the rooms are quieter too. Not calm, careful. Scientists who once debated openly now choose words slowly. Sentences trail off. Questions hang unanswered. Because there's a problem no one knows how to handle. The data no longer points in many directions. It points in one, and that direction feels uncomfortable. In closed meetings, the same graphs are shown again and again. Light pulses, thermal stability, reflectivity shifts, layered, aligned, consistent. Someone finally says what everyone is thinking. These aren't independent effects. No one disagrees, because independence would feel safe. This feels coordinated, machine-like. That phrase enters the room and stays there. Machine-like response, not life, not intelligence, just systems, feedback loops, optimization, the kind of behavior engineers recognize instantly, the kind nature rarely shows without chaos. Someone pushes back. We're projecting. Another replies quietly. Then why does it keep correcting itself? No one has a good answer. They pull up examples from known objects. Comets fragment. Asteroids tumble. Stars flare unpredictably. This object doesn't. It adjusts. Every time conditions change, the response is measured. Never too late. Never too much. As if it knows the margin for error. That's when the arguments begin. Low voices. Closed doors. Some say the word artificial has no place here. Too early. Too speculative. Others argue it's already too late. If this walked like a machine and acted like a machine, the sentence is never finished, because finishing it would change everything. Emails become private. Messages move off shared servers. People stop copying large groups, not because of a conspiracy, but because of fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being first. In science, being wrong is acceptable. Being first is dangerous. No one wants their name attached to a claim this big, so the silence spreads. Not absolute silence. Just distance between teams, between institutions, even between words. Press releases arrive late and say little. Data continues to be analyzed. Models are evolving. Safe phrases, comforting phrases, empty phrases. The public sees nothing unusual. A curious object, a passing visitor. Meanwhile, inside observatories, the mood changes. People stay late. Lights remain on past midnight. But conversations shrink. Because once you say machine, you have to ask who built it. And that question has no safe answer. Someone suggests a probe, a relic, a piece of ancient technology drifting between stars. Another laughs nervously. Too much science fiction. But no one actually disproves it, because the data doesn't laugh. The data waits. It keeps behaving. And behavior is the hardest thing to ignore. One researcher points out something subtle. The object's responses are efficient, not perfect. Efficient, just enough reflectivity to manage heat, just enough pulse strength to remain detectable. No excess, no waste. Nature wastes energy all the time. Machines don't. That comment isn't written down, but it lingers. A senior scientist shuts down a line of discussion. We don't have evidence of construction. True. But they also don't have evidence of randomness anymore, and that absence feels louder every day. Data access becomes restricted, not officially, just carefully. Certain datasets require permission now. Requests take longer to approve. No one says why. Everyone understands anyway. Because uncertainty is easier to manage than implication. The object continues its approach. The sun grows dominant in every frame. Still, the object holds together. Still, the patterns align. And still, no one says the word publicly. Not because it's forbidden, but because once it's spoken, it can't be unheard. Outside, the world goes on. People scroll, sleep, laugh. The sky remains beautiful and distant. Inside, something heavier settles. A quiet agreement not to rush, not to jump, not to name the thing until forced. Because if this isn't natural, then it belongs to a category humanity has never faced directly. And that realization carries weight. Late one night, a message circulates briefly before being deleted. We may be observing a non-biological system responding to stellar exposure. Non-biological system responding. The message vanishes, but the idea stays. The silence thickens. Not from ignorance. No, from caution. From the knowledge that words shape reality. And once reality shifts, there's no reversing it. The object drifts closer to perihelion. Its behavior remains calm, controlled, almost indifferent to the fear it's creating. And as official updates grow vaguer and internal debates grow sharper, one question echoes through every quiet room, watching the data scroll by. If this isn't natural, if the patterns truly point to something machine-like, then why won't anyone say it out loud? Because maybe, deep down, everyone already knows what comes next once they do. And some doors, once opened, never close again. It doesn't begin with panic. It begins with curiosity. A screenshot here, a cropped chart there. Someone posts a graph online with no caption, just a question mark. At first, no one pays attention. The internet is full of strange plots and half-baked theories. Most of them fade within hours. But this one doesn't. Because the numbers look clean. Too clean. The curve rises, falls, waits, then repeats. People start asking where it came from. Someone says, it looks like professional data. Another notices timestamps lining up with known observations. Within days, the image spreads. Then another appears. Different source, same pulse. That's when amateur astronomers step in. Not influencers, not conspiracy hunters. Regular people with backyard telescopes. Quiet hobbyists who spend nights tracking faint dots in silence. They point their instruments towards the same patch of sky, and they see it, not with perfect clarity, not with certainty, but enough. Brightness increases, then drops, then returns, slow, measured, just like the leaked charts. Forums light up. At first, it's excitement. This is incredible. Has anyone seen this before? What are we looking at? Then the tone changes. Because confirmation is powerful. Once multiple people see the same thing independently, it stops being rumor. It becomes shared experience. Someone overlays amateur data with the leaked professional charts. They align, not perfectly, but close enough to feel real. That's when the word changes. No longer object, now signal. It appears casually at first. A comment here, a title there, but language matters. And once you call something a signal, do imply intent. People start asking new questions. Not what is it made of, but why does it repeat? Not where did it come from, but who might be listening? Social media fills with quiet unease, not hysteria, something subtler. A shift in mood. People look up at the night sky differently. Less romantic, more alert. Because signals are meant to be noticed, and noticing goes both ways. Scientists respond carefully. Official statements emphasize uncertainty. Natural explanations, incomplete data. They urge patience. But the public has already felt something change. Because the data is no longer locked away. It's in living rooms, on laptops, shared between strangers at 2 a.m., and everyone sees the same thing. A pulse, steady, unemotional, almost polite. That's what makes it unsettling. If it were loud, it could be dismissed. If it were chaotic, it could be ignored. But this feels considered. Memes appear. Jokes too. That's how people cope. But beneath the humor, there's tension. A quiet question spreading through comment sections and late-night conversations. What if it's not random? What if it's not meant for us? What if it is? News outlets start calling experts. Headlines stay cautious. Unusual astronomical data sparks debate. Scientists study repeating brightness pattern. Safe words. But viewers read between the lines, and the leaked charts keep coming. Not dramatic leaks, just small fragments. Enough to confirm the pulses haven't stopped, enough to show consistency, enough to prove this isn't a fluke. Amateur astronomers coordinate now across time zones, across countries. They watch together. They wait for the pulse. And when it arrives, on schedule, they feel it. Not fear. Recognition. Because humans are good at spotting rhythm. It's how we survived. Heartbeat, footsteps, voices in the dark. A repeating pattern means presence. And that instinct doesn't care about scientific caution. Late-night radio shows pick it up. Podcasts speculate. Some stay grounded, some drift. But the core question remains the same. Why does it pulse? The phrase machine appears more often now. So does artifact. Still speculative, still whispered, but no longer absurd. People remember history, how signals were once dismissed, how discoveries were ignored until they couldn't be. That memory weighs heavy. Scientists feel the pressure. They're asked directly now, is it a signal? They hesitate, and hesitation speaks louder than denial. Because if it were obviously nothing, the answer would be easy. The object continues its approach, brighter each night, more visible, still pulsing, still steady. Someone notices something chilling. After a wave of public attention, the pulse timing shifts slightly. Not much, just enough to be noticed. Some say it's coincidence. Others, aren't so sure, because humans have started watching closely, very closely, and the idea creeps in, slow, unwelcome, impossible to shake. What if observation changes behavior? What if attention matters? The thought spreads quietly, not as belief, as possibility. People argue online. Some call it nonsense. Others call it denial. Most just watch, because watching feels safer than guessing. The sky doesn't change. Stars remain indifferent. But the object now carries weight far beyond its size. It's no longer just data. It's shared uncertainty, a mirror for human fear and wonder. And that's when the deepest question emerges. Not shouted, not trending, just whispered between thoughts. Are we observing it, or has it noticed us? Because there's a difference. Observation is passive. Being noticed is not. The pulse continues, calm, regular, unbothered by the attention it's drawing, as if it doesn't care who's watching, or as if it already knows. And that possibility, more than any chart or graph, settles into the collective mind like a shadow, because once you accept that something might be aware, you can never look at the sky the same way again. And this story, this is no longer just about an object in space. It's about us, watching, waiting, wondering whether curiosity has finally crossed a line, and whether the universe is no longer just something we study, but something that has begun to look back. By now, no one is looking at single graphs anymore. That phase is over. Now, everything is layered. Timing over rotation. Rotation over temperature. Temperature over reflectivity. Stacked. Aligned. Compared again and again. And when the overlays appear on the screen, the room goes still. Because the lines don't drift. They don't blur. They lock. The pulse peaks at the same rotational phase. The reflectivity spike follows the same orientation. The thermal stabilization activates within the same narrow window. Every time. Not roughly. Precisely. This isn't correlation. It's synchronization. And synchronization is hard to explain away. Someone clears their throat. Another leans back in their chair. Because at this level of alignment, coincidence stops being convincing. Nature can be messy, but this is clean. Too clean. The object isn't just reacting, it's coordinating. The data suggests a sequence. First, orientation. Then, reflectivity adjustment. Then, thermal correction. Then, pulse. Like steps in a process. Not simultaneous chaos. Ordered response. And order is where things become uncomfortable, because order implies rules. Rules imply logic, and logic implies purpose. No one uses the word yet, but everyone is thinking it. Artificial. The question doesn't arrive dramatically. It settles in slowly, like a weight. If this were natural, the patterns would drift. They would weaken under stress. They would desync. But they don't. They tighten. The closer the object gets to perihelion, the sharper the alignment becomes. As if proximity matters. As if this moment is important. Someone runs a final test. They randomize one variable in the model. The entire system collapses. Nothing lines up. Then they restore the original data. Everything snaps back into place. That's when denial quietly leaves the room, because you can't argue with alignment that survives stress. Another analyst points out something subtle, The system isn't optimized for speed, it's optimized for survival. Heat is managed. Light is deflected. Exposure is controlled, not to perfection, to sufficiency. That's a design choice, because perfect systems are fragile, resilient systems aren't, and resilience is built. Someone finally asks the question out loud. If this is artificial, the sentence hangs there. No one rushes to finish it, because finishing it opens doors no one knows how to close. Instead, a second question follows. How old would something like this have to be? No one answers, because the answer is unknowable. The object is interstellar. It didn't form here. It didn't originate near our sun. It came from somewhere else. Somewhere distant, somewhere ancient or deliberate. Which leads to the unspoken obsession. Origin. Where did it come from? Not just spatially, but intentionally. Was it sent? Was it left behind? Is it active or dormant until conditions are right? The data doesn't say. But it does suggest one thing clearly. This object wasn't shaped by accident alone. The alignment is too intentional, the behavior too restrained. This isn't a wild machine. It's a quiet one, and quiet machines are often the most advanced. The team debates alternatives. Exotic physics, unknown materials, rare cosmic processes, all possible, all strained. Each explanation works for one feature and fails for the others. Only one explanation fits all of them at once. But no one wants to champion it, because saying artificial doesn't just describe the object. It redefines humanity's place in the universe. It means someone else solved problems we're still learning to name. Heat management, long-term survival, interstellar travel, not with biology, with structure, with engineering. The realization is sobering, not frightening, sobering, because it strips away fantasy. This wouldn't be a message of greeting or a dramatic first contact. It would be something colder, older, a tool, a system doing exactly what it was designed to do, for reasons we don't yet understand. Why now? That question circles every discussion. Why did it arrive during our lifetime? Why pass so close to our sun? Why behave differently only when observed closely? There's no answer, only speculation. Some suggest it's a probe testing stars. Others say it's debris, a relic from a civilization long gone, a machine that outlived its makers. Drifting. Waiting, responding only to energy and physics. That idea is unsettling in a quiet way, because it suggests the universe may be full of leftovers. Silent machines moving between stars, long after their creators disappeared. No intent toward us, no hostility, no welcome, just function. Someone notes something chilling. The object doesn't change behavior when attention increases. It doesn't react to humans. It reacts to the sun, as if we don't matter at all. Which might be the most honest answer of all. If this is artificial, then it wasn't built for us. We're incidental, observers by accident. That realization shifts the tone of every conversation. This isn't about contact. It's about exposure, about witnessing something not meant to be witnessed. A process unfolding on its own terms. The object continues its approach. The patterns hold. The alignment sharpens. No errors, no breakdowns, just quiet confirmation, over and over again. And with each passing day, the question grows heavier. If this is artificial, then someone, somewhere, built it. Not recently, not nearby, but deliberately enough that it still works, still responds, still survives. Which leads to the final, unavoidable thought. If something like this exists, and we only noticed it by accident, how many others are out there, passing silently through the dark, doing exactly what they were designed to do, while we remain unaware? And perhaps more unsettling still, if this object wasn't meant to find us, then what was it meant to find? Because machines don't wander without reason. They move with purpose, even if that purpose is no longer ours to understand. And as the object closes in on perihelion, calm and unchanged, one question now dominates every quiet room, watching the data scroll past. If this is artificial, who built it? And why now? There's a moment when data stops being just data. A moment when numbers no longer feel neutral. That moment has arrived. The object is still moving, still pulsing, still behaving exactly as before. But something else has changed. Us. Inside labs and universities, a quiet divide begins to form. Not loud, not angry, philosophical. On one side, physicists point to measurements, graphs, error bars, equations that still work, mostly. On the other, philosophers ask questions science isn't built to answer. Not how it behaves, but what it means. And suddenly, discovery is no longer just technical, it's personal. A physicist says, we can only talk about what we can measure. A philosopher replies, but measurement doesn't tell you what you're standing inside. Both are right, and that's the problem, because this object sits at the edge of both worlds. It behaves like a system. It aligns like a machine. It survives like something designed. Those are measurable facts. But what follows those facts is interpretation. And interpretation makes people uncomfortable. For decades, humanity has told itself a story. That the universe is vast, but indifferent. That it doesn't care if we exist, doesn't notice us. That meaning is something we create, not something we discover. This object challenges that story. Not loudly, quietly, because if something artificial exists out there, moving between stars, functioning without us, then the universe isn't just a backdrop. It's a place where other intentions have already played out. And that realization hits deeper than fear. It hits identity. Some scientists push back hard. They warn against projection, against anthropomorphism. This could still be natural, they say. And even if it isn't, that doesn't give it meaning. Others pause, because meaning doesn't require intention toward us. A fossil has meaning. A ruin has meaning, not because it speaks, but because it exists. And this object exists, with structure, with behavior, with persistence. That alone reframes everything. The debate spills beyond academia. Writers pick it up. Thinkers, artists. People who don't measure, but feel. They ask questions science doesn't like. What if intelligence isn't rare? What if it's just quiet? What if we've mistaken silence for absence? These questions don't fit neatly into journals, but they spread, and once they do, perception begins to fracture, not into belief and disbelief, but into humility and resistance. Some cling to the old frame, that this must be explainable. that it must fit, because the alternative feels too big. Others accept a simpler, harder truth, that science doesn't lose power when it meets mystery, it gains context. The object doesn't break physics, it obeys it, which means whatever built it understood those laws long before we did. That's not an attack on science, it's a reminder. We are not the final chapter, and that thought humbles some and terrifies others. Because for centuries, humanity has placed itself at the center of understanding, not the center of the universe. We moved past that, but the center of knowing. This object questions that quietly. It doesn't arrive with answers, it arrives with evidence. And evidence can be heavier than belief. Late-night discussions grow more reflective, less technical. People talk about limits, not of instruments, but of assumptions. We assumed intelligence would be loud. We assumed it would announce itself. We assumed it would want something from us. What if it doesn't? What if intelligence leaves behind tools and moves on? What if the universe is layered with stories that never intersect ours? That thought changes how discovery feels. This isn't a moment of triumph. There's no cheering. It's an awakening, a slow realization that the universe might be deeper than our frameworks, that truth may exist beyond what we're equipped to fully explain. Some push back again. Science has always expanded, and it will again. That's true. But expansion requires letting go. And letting go is hard, especially when it means releasing the comfort of being first, or central, or special. The object continues its path. Still silent, still controlled, it doesn't care about our debates. And that indifference becomes the loudest message of all, because it suggests something profound. That reality doesn't wait for our understanding. It unfolds regardless. Meaning isn't something the universe hands us gently. Sometimes it confronts us with scale, with time, with the reminder that our models are provisional, that our truths are temporary, and that knowledge is not the same as wisdom. The collision between philosophy and physics doesn't resolve. It can't, but something new forms in the space between them, a shared recognition. That discovery isn't just about learning new facts. It's about realizing what we assumed before those facts arrived. And many assumptions are now exposed. That we are alone. That intelligence must look like us. That the universe is empty unless proven otherwise. Those ideas feel thinner now. Not gone, just less certain. The public senses it, too, even if they don't follow the data, even if they don't understand the graphs. They feel the shift. Because humans are sensitive to worldview changes. We feel them before we can explain them. The night sky hasn't changed, but our relationship to it has. It's no longer just a canvas for wonder. It's a place where something else has already acted, already built, already moved on. And that realization doesn't diminish us. It challenges us to grow beyond the idea that truth must fit inside our tools. That meaning must be comfortable. That discovery must feel safe. Sometimes truth is larger than science, not because science fails, but because it reveals how vast reality really is. And standing at that edge, between knowing and not knowing, between measurement and meaning, humanity finds itself quieter, more reflective, less certain, but perhaps more honest. Because awakening doesn't arrive with answers, it arrives with better questions. And as the object approaches its closest moment to the sun, as its behavior remains calm and unchanged. One final thought settles into the collective mind. What happens when truth feels larger than science itself? Maybe the answer isn't fear. Maybe it's humility. And maybe this moment, this fracture in perception, isn't the end of understanding, but the beginning of a deeper one. The moment finally arrives. After months of watching, calculating, waiting, the object reaches perihelion, the closest point, the place where heat is strongest, where pressure peaks, where anything fragile should fail. For a brief window, the sun fills the frame. Blinding, overwhelming. This is where answers are supposed to appear. This is where the object should reveal its true nature. Break apart, flare, or react in some dramatic way. Everyone is watching now. Every major observatory. Every instrument tuned and ready. The pulse is still there, faint but present. A familiar rise in brightness. A gentle fall. Still steady, still calm. Then something unexpected happens. The pulse weakens. Not suddenly, not violently. It fades, like a heartbeat slowing after a long run. The rise isn't as high. The fall isn't as deep. At first, no one reacts. They assume it's interference from the sun. Noise, glare. Perihelion is messy, so they wait. Minutes pass, then hours. The pulse doesn't return. The data refreshes. Still flat. Someone reruns the extraction. Nothing. They check other wavelengths. Still nothing. The pulse is gone. The room feels strange. Not relieved. Not afraid. Unsettled, because the pulse didn't break. It didn't distort. It ended cleanly, as if switched off. Attention shifts to thermal data. If anything should change now, it's temperature. The sun is unforgiving at this distance, but the thermal curve doesn't spike. It doesn't oscillate. It collapses. The careful regulation, the controlled balance, disappears. The temperature flattens into silence. No adjustment, no correction. Just passive cooling. Like an engine that's been shut down. This isn't damage. There's no chaotic heat surge. No runaway reaction. The object remains intact, but inactive. A few people whisper the same thought without meaning to. It's done. No one likes that sentence, because done implies purpose, and purpose implies completion. They search for a final signal, a last pulse, a spike, anything. There's nothing. No farewell, no message. Just quiet. The object continues its path, now moving away from the sun. Outbound, still visible, still solid, but different. Its behavior has changed completely. It no longer adjusts reflectivity, no longer manages heat. It behaves like a normal body now. Cold, passive, silent. That's what unsettles people most, because this silence feels intentional too. If the pulses had faded slowly over weeks, it could be decay. If heat control failed under stress, it could be damage. But this is none of that. This is abrupt, orderly, a clean transition from active to inactive. Like a task completed. Someone compares the before and after data. The contrast is stark. Before, perihelion, complex behavior, alignment. Response, after perihelion, nothing. No anomalies. No patterns. Just space. It's as if the object crossed an invisible line and shut itself down. That idea spreads quietly, not as theory, as instinct, because humans recognize endings. We recognize when something stops because it's finished, not because it failed. The sun recedes behind it. The object drifts outward, carrying its silence with it. And suddenly, there's nothing new to analyze. No pulses to wait for, no curves to overlay. The data stream becomes boring, normal. And normal has never felt so unsettling. Some feel relief, whatever that was, it's over. Others feel loss, as if a conversation ended mid-sentence. Because if this was a system, if it was responding to stellar exposure, then perihelion may have been the point, the trigger, the goal, the entire approach for this moment. One encounter with a star, then shut down, which raises a question no one wants to ask too loudly. If this was intentional, then what was the sun to it? A test? A refueling point? A calibration event? Or something else entirely? The object offers no hint. It doesn't look back. It doesn't change course. It simply leaves. Outbound. Quiet. People keep watching for days, then weeks, hoping for a pulse to return. It doesn't. The silence holds. And silence after so much activity feels heavy, like standing in a room after a machine stops running and realizing how loud it was all along. Debates restart quietly. Was the encounter complete? Did the object gather what it needed? Or was perihelion only one step in a longer process? No one knows, because whatever intelligence or system might be behind this, if there is one, left no explanation behind. No signature, no message, just absence, and absence is hard to interpret. Some argue this proves it was natural, that systems don't just turn off. Others disagree. Machines do, especially when designed to conserve energy, especially when a task ends. The object grows fainter as it moves away, harder to track, less interesting to the public eyes. News cycles move on. New stories replace it. But for those who watched closely, something lingers. A sense that something important already happened. Quietly, without ceremony, without us fully realizing it. The sun continues burning. Stars continue shining. The universe resumes its familiar rhythm. But perception doesn't snap back so easily, because once you've seen complex behavior vanish into silence, you can't forget it. And one final question remains. Was that encounter the end, or just a pause? Because silence doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes it means waiting. And if this object activated near one star, there's no rule saying it won't do so again. Near another, somewhere else. Far from our instruments, far from our awareness. Which leaves humanity with an uncomfortable thought that we may have witnessed something brief, something functional, something real, and only understood it after it was over. The object continues into the dark, silent, unchanged. And as it fades from view, one last uncertainty hangs in the empty space it leaves behind. Did we just watch the completion of a process, or the midpoint of something much larger? Because if this was only one phase, then somewhere, someday, another star may light it up again. And next time, we may not be watching at all. And then it's over. Not with an ending anyone can point to. Not with a conclusion written in bold. Just quiet. The sky looks the same as it always has. Stars hold their positions. The sun rises and sets. The universe resumes its familiar rhythm. To anyone not watching closely, nothing ever happened. The object fades into distance, growing dimmer each night until it blends back into the background of space. Another point of light among billions. Another forgotten visitor. Observatories slowly power down their focused tracking. Schedules fill with new targets, new priorities. Observation ends, but resolution does not. The data remains stored, archived, copied again and again. Charts that still don't quite make sense. Patterns that align too well to ignore and too strangely to explain. Every pulse that once rose and fell is still there on the screen. Frozen in time. Every thermal curve, every reflectivity shift. They don't change now. They don't argue. They just exist. And existence, without explanation, is its own kind of pressure. Scientists return to their normal work, but something has shifted. Not outwardly, internally. Because once you've seen order where there should be chaos, you carry that with you. Once you've watched behavior vanish into silence, you don't forget the moment it stopped. The object no longer demands attention, but it commands memory. Late at night, some still pull up the old files. Not to analyze, just to look. To remind themselves it was real, that they didn't imagine the alignment, the timing, the control. Because doubt creeps in easily when the sky looks ordinary again. And the sky does look ordinary. That's what makes the quiet so heavy. No signals arrive. No new anomalies appear. The universe offers no follow-up. As if nothing unusual ever passed through. As if this was always how it was meant to be. And yet, no explanation closes the case. Natural theories still stretch. Artificial ones remain unproven. The truth sits in between, unresolved, which is the most uncomfortable place of all. Humanity is used to answers, even wrong ones. We like names, categories, stories with endings. This has none. Just a question that refuses to leave. Was this a rare, natural process? Something we simply don't understand yet? Or was it something else? Something built, something left behind. A system doing its work, quietly, then moving on. If it was natural, it changes our understanding of physics. If it wasn't, it changes our understanding of ourselves. Either way, the universe is no longer as simple as it once felt. And that realization lingers, not as fear, as humility. Because the most unsettling part isn't the idea that we might not be alone. It's the idea that we might not matter to whatever passed by. That this object didn't slow down for us, didn't speak to us, didn't acknowledge our curiosity. We were observers, not participants. Witnesses to something that wasn't about us at all. That thought reframes everything. The night sky is still beautiful, still vast, but now it feels occupied, not crowded, just used, like a road that has seen travelers long before we learned to look up. People ask if this was first contact. The honest answer is quieter. Contact implies intent. This felt more like passing evidence, a footprint in the snow, already fading. And footprints don't tell you who passed by. Only that someone did. Archives will preserve the data. Papers will be written. Debates will continue. Years from now, new instruments may revisit the question. New minds may see patterns we missed. Or finally explain them away. that's possible. But something irreversible has already happened. The idea that space is empty is harder to believe now. The idea that intelligence must announce itself feels naive. The idea that silence means absence has lost its power, because silence can mean completion, or patience, or distance. The object taught us that without teaching us anything directly, and that may be the most honest lesson of all. As nights pass, people still look up, not searching for it, but remembering it. Remembering how a small inconsistency became a global question. How certainty cracked quietly, without drama. How the universe reminded us that understanding is always provisional, and that truth doesn't always arrive with permission. The sky has returned to normal. But normal doesn't feel the same anymore, because somewhere beyond the reach of our instruments, something continues its journey, silent, functional, indifferent. Whether it was natural or artificial, whether it was chance or design, one fact remains. We saw something real, something unexplained. And we didn't imagine it, which leaves one final question hanging, not in the data, but in the human mind. Was this just a mystery of nature, waiting for a better equation? Or was it the first quiet hint that we are not alone in the dark? The universe does not answer. It never does. It simply keeps moving, leaving us to decide what the silence means. And perhaps that is the quietest truth of all, that the moment passes, the sky goes still, but the question stays, not as fear, as wonder, as humility, as the understanding that whatever lies beyond us does not need our attention to exist. And yet, we will keep watching the dark, because now we know, sometimes, the dark watches back.